All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going deep into a text that you, our listener, wanted to explore.
Absolutely.
It's chapter 12 of the book of Numbers.
From the King James Bible.
Right, the King James Version. And of course, we're going to be using the insightful commentary of Matthew Henry to kind of guide us through this.
Yes, you were curious about this really pivotal moment involving Moses and his siblings, Miriam and Aaron. Right?
Yeah.
On the surface, it seems like a pretty straightforward story. You know, there's some disagreement, there's some divine intervention, and we see some consequences. However, when we really get into it, when we really dig deep, there's so many layers of meaning.
Oh, for sure.
And there are actually a lot of implications for us today, even thousands of years later.
Oh, yeah. And your request was specifically to, unpack this chapter, unpack Henry's commentary, and really grasp like the core issues, right? Like what even spurred Miriam and Aaron to speak against Moses in the first place? What happened because of that? And then, the lasting significance.
Right, exactly. Like, what does this account mean for us?
Okay, so let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
The initial point of contention, it seemed to be twofold, right? Like it wasn't just one thing that sparked this whole ordeal.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It looks like their speaking against Moses was triggered by at least two things. First, the text mentions their displeasure with Moses, and it specifically says because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married.
Right.
Right away, this brings up some questions, about the social and cultural norms of that time.
Oh, absolutely.
And how they viewed marriage, especially marriage outside of the community. But then verse 2, it adds another layer, another really fascinating dimension to the story. It says, and they said, hath the Lord indeed spoken only by Moses? Hath he not spoken also by us? So it's not just about his wife.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's like they're also kind of bringing up their own connection to God.
That's right.
And their own prophetic abilities, right? They're almost saying, hey, we've got a direct line too.
That's it. They're definitely challenging Moses' position as God's, primary spokesperson.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I wonder if one grievance kind of fueled the other or if they were like totally separate issues.
Oh, that's a great question. It's definitely possible. Maybe the marriage, maybe that was the initial thing, and maybe that highlighted some differences or like growing distance between them.
Yeah.
And then that kind of gave them the, the courage or the audacity, you could say, to kind of voice these feelings that they've had, bubbling up about their own prophetic roles. But maybe they were just like totally separate concerns that just happened to come up at the same time. We don't know for sure. But either way, I think the very next sentence in Numbers is really important. It just says, flat out, and the Lord heard it.
Right.
So it's not just family drama at this point.
Right.
God is very aware of what they're saying and what they're doing.
It definitely elevates it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, their words have weight. Now, right after we hear about these complaints, we get this interesting description of Moses, almost like a parenthetical statement. It says, now the man Moses was very meek, above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. Why do you think this is here? Why is it placed right at this moment in the story?
It's an interesting placement for sure. And I think you're right. Like, it almost feels intentional, like the writer's trying to emphasize something.
Yeah.
And what's so fascinating is a contrast, right? So here you have this direct challenge to Moses's leadership. And you could even say it's a challenge to a personal decision, his marriage. But the story emphasizes his humility, his meekness.
Yeah.
It's a very specific word choice. And Matthew Henry, he picks up on this in his commentary. He really highlights Moses's patience, even when he's facing, opposition from his own family.
Right.
His siblings. It makes us think, doesn't it, about the motivations of Miriam and Aaron.
It really does.
Like, were they being jealous?
Yeah.
Were they power hungry?
Yeah.
And we don't know, but it definitely makes their complaints seem a bit more, you'd say a bit more harsh, right?
Yeah.
Because they're questioning a man who's known for his meekness, his humility.
Right. And then suddenly, bam, we have divine intervention. God calls Moses, Aaron, and Miriam to the tabernacle.
Right. He doesn't send an angel or a messenger.
Yeah.
It's very direct.
A summons.
It's a summons.
Yeah.
It's like, get over here.
Yeah.
And it shows how seriously God is taking the situation. And remember, the tabernacle was the center of their worship. It was where God's presence dwelt. So it was a big deal.
It was.
To be called there.
Yeah.
It wasn't a casual invitation.
Yeah. And then God speaks, right? And he makes this really clear distinction between Moses's prophetic role and the role of other prophets. It's powerful, those verses about how God speaks to other prophets through visions and dreams.
Right.
But with Moses, it's mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches. And the similitude of the Lord shall he behold. I mean, that's pretty unambiguous, right?
Yeah, it's as clear as it gets. It's this incredible declaration of Moses's unique relationship with God. And, when we think about the bigger picture, the whole story of the Exodus, we could see why this was so important.
Oh, for sure.
Moses needed that direct and clear communication with God to lead the Israelites out of Egypt,
Yeah.
to guide them through the wilderness. It was absolutely essential.
Mm.
So God is basically saying, hey, I've chosen Moses, and this is how I communicate with him.
Yeah, and it's not just about Moses being a prophet. It's about the specific kind of prophet that he was, right, at this pivotal point in history. And then God says something else really important. He asks Aaron and Miriam, "Wherefore then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?"
Oh, man, those words must have hit them like a ton of bricks.
Right. It's like this huge question about respect and reverence.
Exactly. It's about how we should treat those who God has chosen to lead.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, because they were family, because they were so close to Moses, they kind of forgot about the importance of his calling,
Oh, yeah.
the significance of it, and the potential consequences of challenging him. Sometimes familiarity can breed contempt.
Yeah. Familiarity breeds contempt, and the aftermath of that is pretty intense.
Oh, it is.
God's anger is kindled, he departs, and the cloud, which represents God's presence, lifts from the tabernacle.
Right. Matthew Henry talks about this, the cloud leaving. He says it's the biggest sign of God's displeasure. It's like this tangible symbol of God's favor and protection. And it's gone.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? It makes you think about how fragile that connection can be. And then, boom, Miriam is struck with leprosy. The text says she becomes white as snow.
Talk about immediate consequences. There's
Yeah.
a vivid image,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a harsh judgment, and it makes you think about the power of God.
It really does. It's such a powerful image, white as snow. You have this pure color white, but it's associated with this disease, with this impurity.
Yeah.
And Aaron, when he sees his sister like this, I mean, he must have been terrified.
I can't even imagine. And Henry connects this directly to Miriam's words.
Oh, wait.
He says that her foul tongue, the way she spoke against Moses, was punished with a foul face, meaning leprosy.
Wow.
It's this idea of divine retribution, that the punishment fits the crime.
Yeah. And then things shift. Aaron, who was totally involved in this, right, in speaking against Moses, he turns to Moses and begs him for help.
Right. He says, "Alas, my Lord, I beseech thee, lay not the sin upon us, wherein we have done foolishly, and wherein we have sinned."
Yeah, he admits they messed up.
Totally. He owns it. There's no justification, no excuses. He's just begging for mercy. For Miriam and for himself.
Yeah. And the way he describes Miriam's condition is so vivid.
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
He says, "Let her not be as one dead, of whom the flesh is half consumed when he cometh out of his mother's womb."
It shows just how horrifying leprosy was to them. Like they're comparing to a stillborn child, decaying in the womb.
Right.
It's powerful. And it shows how desperate they are.
And it maybe shows how they understood sin. Like, it could lead to spiritual death.
That's a good point.
Now, Moses could have been like, "Well, you guys got what you deserved," right? But he doesn't. Instead, he prays. He cries out to God, "Heal her now, O God, I beseech thee." It's incredible.
I know, especially after what they said about him.
Right. It really shows his forgiveness, his compassion.
Matthew Henry compares it to Christ interceding for those who persecuted him.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a great parallel.
It is.
Yeah.
And it really highlights that meekness that we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
Moses doesn't seek revenge. He doesn't hold on to resentment. He prays for Miriam. And that's a powerful lesson in leadership.
Yeah. But the healing doesn't come without conditions, right? God lays out some specific terms.
Right. Miriam has to be shut out of the camp for 7 days. It's this period of symbolic shame. God even compares it to a father spitting in his daughter's face.
Right.
It's intense.
Yeah,
It shows how seriously God took this whole thing.
it really does. And the text says that the people didn't travel until Miriam was brought back in. So her sin, even though she was forgiven, it still caused this delay for the entire community.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
It shows how interconnected they were.
Yeah.
And Matthew Henry really emphasizes this. He says that sin can create these huge obstacles in our journeys, especially when it involves leadership or when it affects the whole community.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're all in this together.
Yeah, we are.
One person's actions can impact everyone.
And then after the 7 days, Miriam is brought back in.
Mm-hmm.
It shows that she's forgiven, that she's restored.
Right. It's a beautiful picture of reconciliation.
It is.
Even after a huge mess up, even after serious consequences.
So what are the big takeaways here?
Well, this chapter is really about leadership and about the importance of respecting those whom God has chosen to lead.
Right.
We also see the dangers of challenging that authority,
Yeah.
even when it comes from family or from a sense of, our own importance. But we also see the power of meekness
Yeah.
and intercession. Like Moses shows us what it means to forgive and to pray for those who have wronged us.
Yeah.
We see God's justice, but also his mercy and the need to admit when we're wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And ultimately, it's a story about restoration, about the possibility of coming back into the community, even after we've messed up.
And Matthew Henry's commentary adds another layer to all of this.
Oh, yeah, he makes some fascinating connections.
He does.
Especially when he compares Moses to Christ.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about leadership on a whole new level.
It really does. It leaves us with a lot to ponder. Like, how do we view those in authority over us?
Right. How do we handle disagreements?
Yeah.
How do we make sure that our words build people up rather than tearing them down?
Right.
It's a timeless story with timeless questions.
It is. And something for all of us to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Numbers 12. We'll see you next time.
See you then.
Bye.